was going to record it for them. So I'm going to start recording. Hopefully it is recording now. Is it recording? Yes, it is recording. All right. So let's start off with by just kind of identifying and talking about each of these philosophies and their relationship to, first of all, to metaphysics, and then their relationship to epistemology. And let me start by defining those two terms, period. Metaphysics is the study of reality and existence. So we're going to understand each basic philosophy first through that lens. How does it relate to reality? What exists right now? What is in existence right now? And then how do we understand it relative to epistemology, which is just the study of knowledge itself? And then you'll see on the screen that there are some focuses in a curriculum. They're like examples from a classroom activity. They're examples of the role the teacher might play, the goal for students and educational leaders within this field. So these philosophies are a lot like lenses through which we can view teaching and learning. So the first lens is essentialism. And some are more teacher-centered, as the two that I'm going to outline first, while others are more student-centered, and those are going to be the three that we talk about later. By the end of me talking, hopefully you will have a better understanding of how each of these philosophies might apply to your own experience as students and maybe even as future educators. So let's start with essentialism. Essentialism is also known as kind of back to the basics. So when we think about the root word of essentialism, we think of the word essential, which means like to have the basics, like the essentials of life are food, water, clothes, right? And so that is thinking of education as like a back to the basics approach. It is student-centered, meaning that the teacher is the authority in the classroom, and the focus is on transferring knowledge from the teacher to the student. Okay, so back to the basics approach, teacher-centered. Teacher is the authority, the primary knowledge holder in the room, and their job is to transfer what they know to the students themselves. Essentialists believe that students should learn the core subjects like math, science, history, and English, and that these are what's essential knowledge for everyone. And they believe the physical world is the basis of reality. So they're not involved in a bunch of theory, like what is here is what exists. And they think that you learn through reasoning and being presented with empirical reasoning, like pure reasoning. Some key figures. This essentialism was popularized in the 1930s by a man named William Bagley. And there was another man by the name of E.D. Hirsch, Jr., who wrote a book called Cultural Literacy. And in this book, he was arguing that all Americans should share a common body of knowledge. So there should be some common things that all American students should know and be able to be proficient in. A classroom example of essentialism, you'll see a lot of traditional teaching methods if you went into a classroom that really took the teaching approach of essentialism. The teacher would be lecturing, yikes, that's what I'm doing. And the students would be taking notes, yikes, that's what you're doing. And there would be a heavy emphasis on testing to make sure that the students understood the material at hand. Electives like art and music in a school would be less likely to be seen because they're not part of core curriculum. Remember, essentialists believe that it's its own, like it's the basic science, math, reading that are important to students. And so if we take this outside of the classroom and if we think about this in terms of life, think about it in terms of kind of learning how to drive. Your instructor teaches you the rules of the road. They teach you how to parallel park, which some of us still can't do, and how to merge onto the highway. And these are the essential things that you need to know to be a competent driver. So essentialism in education is similar. It's about mastering the basics so that you can function in the world fully. Okay? So those are the very basic things that, we're not going to get in. Essentialists aren't going to go deep with it. They're just going to kind of go wide, making sure that you have the basic knowledge that you need. And then the next one is perennialism. And this philosophy is also teacher-centered. Let me stop there. Does anybody have any questions about essentialism, or do you need me to repeat anything that I said about essentialism? Okay. All right, perennialism is next. It is also a teacher-centered philosophy and approach, but it's more focused on like timeless ideas and quote unquote great books. Any of you part of the Great Books program at your elementary school? They were like these, like the old school books, like the classics. And you would read them, they were like age appropriate. Well, this is that program is a byproduct of perennialism. Perennialists believe that education should focus on the enduring ideas of life found in classic literature, philosophy, and science. One of my best friends taught at a school in Arizona who only taught like this. Like they only taught the classics. They could never have, like, if they had music playing in the classroom, it had to be the classics. They could only read Shakespeare and things like that. And she talked about it being helpful. The goal of this approach is to develop rational thought and to create moral beings, which is interesting. So when we think of it in terms of metaphysics, we think of it in terms of the realm of thought and spirit, rooted in the physical world. So all human beings are by nature rational animals. So that's why we have to go through the classics, because the classics are rooted in this idea of rational thought. And so that is kind of the metaphysical embodiment of perennialism. When we think about the epistemological ideology of it, it is we learn through reasoning, particularly through creative, deep, and logical analysis. And that's what according to some, that's what the classics give us an opportunity to do. In a core curriculum, you would be analyzing enduring ideas found in great books or classics. Like you'd be reading a lot of Shakespeare, you would be reading a lot like Grapes of Wrath and all of those old-timey books. The role of the teacher is as a scholarly role model. They are philosophically oriented, so they're going to do a lot of question posing to you and not really give you answers. They're going to have more questions than answers. They're going to help students seek the truth for themselves, which is never a bad thing. Some of the key figures of this ideology is a man named Robert Hutchins and another man named Mortimer Adler. And they are big advocates of what's called the Great Books curriculum. Again, those classic books that you read in school. And a couple of colleges really embrace this and like only study the great books. So a classroom example of this would be in a perennial classroom, you would spend a lot of time reading and discussing classics like Plato's Republic or Shakespeare's plays. The teacher would lead the discussions, but the focus would be on the ideas in the book, not the teacher's opinion. There would be a few electives because the curriculum is focused on this timeless work. So they would have music, but it would be classical music, right? You might have a dance class, but it's going to be classical dance. You're not going to have jazz or hip hop or reggaeton or salsa. There's not going to be any of that. A life example of this approach would be think about being a part of a book club, which you are, where everyone discusses a book like To Kill a Mockingbird. And the goal isn't just to enjoy the book, but to explore the deeper themes of the book, like justice, morality, and human nature. And so that's really what perennialism is about. It's about engaging with ideas that have stood the test of time. Did you get my text? No. Not text. Do not come, girl.
Why not?
Because because when I saw how much it was snowing out there, I was like, I'm gonna let you all go early.
Really?
And then I started recording it for you. Oh. Yeah. So
I'm here.
I know. So that is so in large part, if we think about these two as just in general as teacher-centered philosophies, they're emphasizing this transfer of knowledge, this transfer of information, and the skills that get transferred from the old to the young. And teachers' job is to, again, transfer the knowledge that they have, but also, especially in perennialism, to build character, perseverance, duty, and practicality. That's the job of a teacher, to instill this in students. And success is demonstrated through testing and writing and adhering to the moral standards of the time. So thinking about these two and thinking about them in relationship to your own student experience, to your life as a student. Did you ever have classes that fit into either one of these? Joanna, you're saying? Okay, talk to me about it.
Oh, for
Perennialism.
Yeah. So I had an art class and he would have us work like individually. But anytime anyone would ask him, hey, can we listen to music on our own time? He would say, no, we're gonna put music right now. He would put only like I used to the classical music. And I mean, it kind of ended up having kids go to sleep and doing things.
It was like a lullaby.
Yeah, because I mean, no one really listens to that type of stuff moving unless they're like reading or studying. But when you're engaging in stuff or like doing hands-on activities, you want something that will be your comfort.
Yeah.
Because then it'll just kind of doze you off. I can't think about how many times I actually might have fallen asleep for a little bit. But yeah, it was. Even for like social studies too, we stuck with the classics as well. We never really went into like the we stuck with what they said as how I want to say and never really like what would actually happen.
Okay, so you had a decent amount of experience with it. So when you were talking, it reminded like yesterday, my husband and I were at the gym and we were working out with our trainer, and he asked what kind of music he would like to listen to. And my husband was like, oh, put on some Kendrick, put on some Future. That would be like him saying, put on the classics. Like, I'm not working out to no darn classics, y'all. Like, Beethoven's 10th Symphony is not what I'm interested in working out to. So, and I think that there is a time and place for those things, but those things also have to lead to what is current. If we are always studying the classics in the past, then it restricts us from being able to analyze what's happening in the future and connecting it to what has happened in the past. Anybody else have any experience with being educated like this?
I think for more of like the essentialism, I know like all of my math classes felt the same. It was more of like the teachers just being okay, let's stick to the curriculum, and it wasn't outside of that.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, I have a hard time really grasping math. So it was more difficult because it was just more of like them giving us the papers, giving us slideshow, and then just having us work on it.
Yeah.
Rather than like in history or my English classes, they would go more in depth or give examples or time frames that really fit with the topic we were doing.
Yeah, that's exact. You described exactly how I feel. Like all my math teachers were so like to the basics, like by the book, and it never applied to me. Like I was like, how does this apply to my life? Like, when am I ever going to use this? And so because I could not see a connection, and because then you start throwing letters with numbers, I was like, oh y'all got me all effed up. I can barely get the number straight, and now you put a letter with it, and I have to figure out what this letter is worth. And so it really messed me up. So I kind of had that same experience, especially in math class. All right, so let's move on to some of the more student-centered philosophies.
So question.
Yes.
You're getting the definitions of each word on the Google slide? Like on the chart? Is that
Some of them are. No, I'm using my notes too.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm recording it, so hopefully I can add it, upload it too. So progressivism is one of the student-centered philosophies. And it focuses on learning by doing. Progressivists believe that students learn best from real-world experiences and problem solving. And that the teacher's role is to guide students in their exploration of their interests and guide them in solving problems themselves. So when it comes to the metaphysical basis of progressivism, they believe that the physical world is the basis for reality, and the world inevitably progresses over time. So remember, the perennialists were kind of stuck in the classics. And progressives believe, again, like that root word progress, that things change over time, that there's an evolution of things over time. And when it comes to learning, they believe that we learn best from meaningful life experiences, from social interaction. So if you were in a progressive classroom, you might have a lot of group activities, and also from scientific experimentation. When we think about a curriculum related to progressivism, it's flexible. It integrates a study of academic subjects around the needs and experience of students. The role of the teacher, again, is to just act as this guide and to integrate learning activities so that students really can find the meaning for themselves. And the goal for students is just to become intelligent problem solvers so that they are socially aware and they are prepared to live comfortably in the world. Some of the key figures of progressivism is John Dewey, who's also known as the father of progressive education. He believed that education should revolve around real world problems. So if you were in a progressive classroom, what you might see is you'd see students working in groups. You see them going on field trips. You would see them engaging in like a bunch of hands-on activities, maybe doing a bunch of station work. And the teacher really acts more as a guide than anything. The curriculum is flexible, whereas remember, in an essentialist classroom, that curriculum is fixed. Like, you are going to study math, you're going to get this science, you're going to get this reading, and that's about it. And it's very routine. You know what you're going to be studying. Because this is more student driven and student centered, a progressive classroom is flexible, and the learning really does depend on the student interest. So that's what a classroom would look like. But let's look at a real world example of that. So how might that look in life? Think about learning to cook. Instead of reading recipes, in a progressivist environment, you would actually go into the kitchen, like you'd have like a cooking lab, I don't know if y'all watch HGTV, but like there's a show called Worst Cooks Ever. And it'd be like that. Like instead of them giving you a recipe to follow, you would like go into the kitchen and actually engage in the cooking itself. You would try different techniques, you would taste different things, and so you would learn through experience. Any questions about that one? Okay. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of you have experienced classrooms that have a progressive approach. I think typically that is how classrooms nowadays are oriented to be more progressive. The next one is social reconstructivism. And again, another student-centered approach, but it takes things a step further than progressivism because not only is it focused on the progress of the student, social reconstructivism is focused on changing society. Um, social reconstructivists, social reconstructivists believe that education should address social issues like poverty, racism, and environmental problems. And in the end, the goal of the social reconstructivist classroom is to create a more equal and just society. So their physical orientation to the world is on the basis of reality and where the world progresses, but they understand also this process is a process and that nothing's going to happen overnight, that this process may be slow. They believe that we learn best through meaningful social interactions and experiences that improve society. So it might be doing a service learning project. It might be through creating organization. So we might be studying Central America and their access to water. And a social reconstructivist classroom would say, okay, we've seen this as a problem. What do we do as members of society to help solve this problem? Who is impacted by this problem? How deep does this problem go? And how do we ensure that there is water justice in this environment? Some key figures for this is a man by the name of George Counts, and he wrote a book called Dare the Schools Build a New Social Order? And then Madal Paulo Freire, who is a Brazilian educator. He was more of a philosopher, but then turned educator. And he really believed and wrote a lot about education empowering the oppressed. Education as a means of empowering the oppressed. And we talked before about, we were talking earlier, I think Jennifer brought it up in her book, that Black folks are on the bottom of that social and that justice ladder. And what Paulo Freire did was he used the experience of Black Brazilians to build this model of how you empower the oppressed, which was really powerful, which is so powerful, in fact, that we still utilize Paulo Freire's framing of education today. A classroom example is learning by reconstructing society. For example, students might work to remove health hazards in a building, or they might build a habitat for humanity's home. Teachers provide authentic learning experience that both instruct students and improve society. And the goal for students really is to be intelligent, to problem solve, and to enjoy learning. And we haven't heard that word before, right? Like the idea of joy in learning in these other philosophies has not been mentioned. But in order to be a social reconstructivist, there is an element of joy in education. And so if I think of a classroom example of it, it might be that students are investigating social problems like homelessness or climate change, and then they would take action to address these issues. So almost like a social justice oriented classroom grows out of social reconstructivism. So they might organize a food drive, they might write to lawmakers, they might create a public awareness campaign in the class. And the teacher's role is to facilitate the person who is in charge in the classroom in a social reconstructivist classroom is the student. They are in charge of the learning. So let's think of a life example. So you got a couple of folks organized in a food drive for a local shelter. They're not just learning about hunger, they're actively working to solve the problem that exists. And so that is the action orientation of social reconstructivism. Any questions about that one? Anybody have experience in a class like that? Okay.
So as I mentioned before, my high school focused on social justice.
Yes.
So on our senior year, we would do this thing called a fire project, and we would basically pick a social issue that we're passionate about. So I focused mine on mental health, dealing with body dysmorphia, body image, like that whole thing. And we had like a rubric. So at the end of our project, we had to actually do an action portion of it. So we would actually do something about it or advocate for it. So then, I mean, some people would go as far as like creating like support groups for the projects, or they would go out and actually spread awareness and do the whole thing. Just because our school mainly focused on the social justice issues. And I mean, every year we would always do a unit of what's going on in the world and how is it affecting, and it just kept us in the loop of everything that's going on.
What school? Tell me the name of your school again.
So I went to Greater Longdale High School, and then I went to the one section of social justice.
Okay. And what was your action?
So mine was dealing, like how I said, with the body image and stuff. So I would go in the school. I think there was maybe 4 girls' bathrooms. So around every bathroom, I would put sticky notes on the mirrors, and I would write positive thoughts on it. I would make posters and put it on the girls' locker rooms in the gyms, basically spreading awareness, and then also giving tips, hotlines, and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome, because so often, especially for people who identify as female, that body dysmorphia, we are so inundated with messages about our image, and sometimes it's our own voice that is the loudest. So that's really good. I love this called a fire project because you're passionate about it. Great. Ooh. I might have to investigate that more. Anyone else?
Like I said, I did IB. So in the IB course, there's this class called Theory of Knowledge, and it also kind of ties into progressivism because it's all about like how you do things and like what matters to you. So a lot of the learning is like, oh yes, you're learning it, but how do you do it? Or like, how is it important to you? Why is it important to you?
Well, that's okay. So like that's real learning, right? We can have all of this information, but if we're not applying it to ourselves and understanding the why of it to us, then it's seriously going to go in one ear and out the other. The fact that we retain information for only like 18 minutes before it flies out of our brain And the way to really make it stick is to either have a cultural reference to it that is meaningful for us, or to connect it to something that's already in our knowledge and being. That's the way you learn. That is true knowledge. All right, the next one is existentialism. That's our last student-centered one. And it is really one that's rooted in self-discovery and individual choice. So essentialists believe that education should help students find their own meaning and purpose in life. The focus is on personal growth. It's not on standardized tests or any of that other stuff. It's not even on a fixed curriculum. So if you went into an existentialist, yeah, well, why do I always mess up this one? Existentialist, yeah, that word. I'm gonna get it right. Existentialism classroom, you would not find a standard curriculum, because it really is personal learning at its best. So as far as the metaphysical world, they believe that reality is individualized, so that we bring our own reality. So what is my reality might not be your reality. And it is determined by people who shape their innermost nature in accordance with their own free will. Basically, it's just about your individual thoughts, realities, will. And then they believe that knowledge is determined by each individual, that our learning strategies and our learning engages emotionally as well as intellectually. And the focus of the curriculum is on each student to determine their pace and their direction. Some of the key figures of this are a man by the name of Jean-Paul Sartre. He was a famous existentialist philosopher out of France. And another one is A.S. Neal, who founded a school based on these principles. So if I think about this in terms of what it would look like in a classroom, students have a lot of freedom to choose what they want to learn and really how they want to learn it. The teacher acts as a mentor, kind of helping students to explore their own interests and passions, which kind of sounds like, Joanna, what you did too with your fire project. There's no set curriculum. Students decide what's important to them. And so if I think about this in terms of almost like a real world scenario, think about it in terms of, okay, you're at a person, you're at a crossroads in life, and you're trying to figure out what career to pursue. And an essentialist approach would just encourage you to explore what you're passionate about, what you value in life, and to find your own path rather than going by what your parents say or what your friends say or what your boo says. It would just be like, what are you passionate about? And so that's what education looks like. What are you passionate about? That's what we're going to follow. So in an existentialist class or school, it really is going to, no two students might be doing the same thing. It's going to be highly personalized. And because of that, you're not going to see this a lot in education, because that's hard. Who studied Montessori? Oh, yeah, you study Montessori. Montessori is that type of existentialism. It is, you put things in place and students can kind of meander and go and explore and learn for themselves. And if they want to spend 3 weeks kind of dissecting the butterfly cycle, they can. And it really is up to the teacher to kind of guide. But while that student might spend 3 weeks learning the butterfly cycle, another student might be learning how to dig a well, or the importance of digging a well in communities that don't have access to clean water. Yes.
So like we did talk about like how like it Montessori did have an impact on like how we learn today, especially in the standard curriculum. And I said essentially no, but yes, but no, because like y- you would choose like when especially when you choose electives in high school, um there are like blocks of freedom to choose
Mhm.
what specific subject you want to take as an elective, and then within that elective there's a certain curriculum. But like let's say you choose painting, um you're going to get to decide what you want to paint. Now, there's going to be a certain medium that you have to use,
Yeah.
NET, etc., but you're going to decide what you want to do, and no one's going to be painting the exact same thing. However, it is structured in the sense that you're all painting and you're all using the same medium, whereas like Montessori would be like completely different, where you would all be doing something like randomized different on the person and based on their interests.
Yeah, there is a school, and I'll find it. My cousin works there that practices this. I'll try to find it while you're taking this next quiz and show you some videos of it because it is absolutely the embodiment of existentialism, and they do it well. There are actually no teachers.
No.
There are no teachers. They're guides, there are aides in the classroom, but there are absolutely no teachers. And when you hear the work that these students are doing, you're like, oh, you don't need a teacher. You got this. So it's a really interesting concept. And I actually think it's going to be the mode of the future of education, especially with the advent of things like AI. What do y'all need me for if y'all can go on AI? If you could have an AI generated person, I guess the only thing would be that I have classroom experiences that I can share and give examples of. But I do think that education is going to look a lot different and a lot more personalized, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. But it is very far away from like we started with essentialism and we're ending with existentialism, and they are at the absolute opposite ends of the spectrum. Like one says that there's a basic source of knowledge that you have to have, and existentialists say there is no basic. You can learn whatever you want to, and so maybe we need something in the middle of that. Maybe and maybe that's why most education today looks like progressivism because that is in the middle. So these student-centered philosophies are less authoritarian. They're less concerned with the past and training a child's mind, and more focused on a student's individual need. They also have contemporary relevance, again, not just considering the classics and thinking about old school math and having to do those damn proofs that don't matter, but what is relevant in the lives of students today. And it's about Destiny, you dropped your marker, just so you know. And about preparing students to change the future. So it's about looking ahead. Okay. So now that you've seen all five of them, which resonates most with you? Talk to me. Destiny, which resonates most with you?
Is this a little?
Yeah, I have a hard time saying
I
it.
only see three. You said pick five, right?
Yep.
I mean pick three, right? Wait. I'm
There's
sorry.
five. There's five. So you just saw three because you came late.
Yeah.
I don't know the other two.
Okay, so just pick one from there. So
But from this one, I say essentialism
okay.
because self-discovery, student choice, focusing on personal growth, and like bringing our own reality. Like I feel like that's an important thing. When it comes down to education or just trying to find, what you want to do for your future. Because, if you apply too much pressure, it can cause a person to sometimes either self-destruct or be distracted and unfocused and feel overwhelmed. But when you just let them like kind of move to the beat of their own drum and, I don't know how to say it, be more like understanding of their surroundings and where they're coming from and how much they're trying, you know.
Yeah, that's a power in that practice.
Yeah.
I also think that in a classroom, never are two students at the same stage, have the same level of understanding. So to a certain extent, we have to apply this personalized approach to education and think about and connect students learning to their own interest and passion. Otherwise, we can't move them forward. Who else? What other ones stand out to you? Alondra, was there one that stood out to you most?
I feel like the social reconstruction itself, but that's more like now in my college like experience. I feel like in a lot like including this class, they talk about like the real world problems that are happening and like social issues. I didn't really see that a lot like in high school. I think it was more just focused on the curriculum. We didn't really talk about that, depending on the teacher as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I see it more in like my college classes where we're more open to talking about stuff that goes on in our lives rather than just focusing on the material that we're supposed to learn.
And do you think that that's a good thing or?
No, I think it's a good thing. I like it a lot because it's like good to come to school and know that like this is also not like a good thing, but like that is also affecting other people.
Mm.
And it's not just like something that is happening outside of school, like it affects us like while we're here as well.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that. Like when people ask me about my philosophy of education, I'm probably social reconstructivist. Just because I think that the purpose of education is to change society. I think that we are here to make the world a better place. And that if we just look at ourselves as individuals, then that helps nothing. Like our personal advancement, our personal desire to advance sometimes impedes um, on other things. I just was watching, and this is an old study, but I was just rewatching a video about it. So there was a study done in, I think it was the 70s or 80s, and it asked employees, like, right, if you could have a job and take a job, and that job paid you $55,000 a year, but your colleagues made $25,000, would you take it? Or would you take a job where you made $55,000 and your colleagues made 10,000? Oh no, well, or your colleagues made the same amount, right? Like, would you take the job where you had a job where you started off at $55,000 a year and everybody at the company started off at $55,000 a year? Or would you take a job where you made $55,000 a year and you were the highest paid person and everybody else made $25,000 a year? Guess what most people say?
What?
That they want the job making $55,000 a year and everybody else making $25,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
That's really odd because we did a sociological study when I was like in high school. So like we had a sociology class and the study was like it was an original study done at like I don't know Harvard or something. And it was like you have a bidder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a person who is an offerer and a person who is a taker.
Yep.
And you have $10, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who's the offerer can offer any amount between 10 and 1. And if you give 10 and if you say yes, you both like get any amount of money. So it would be like I say, Professor, I want to give you $3, but I get $7. And if you say yes, then you get $3, I get $7.
Mm.
Okay. If you say no, we both get nothing.
Mm.
Now, surprisingly, so we did it with lollipops because I'm not I'm not rich.
Mhm.
Okay. And so we did it with lollipops, and we walked up to a bunch of kids. We pulled a bunch of kids out from a bunch of classrooms. We gave them 10 lollipops. I said, you're the giver, you're the receiver. You gotta barter 50-50 every single time.
Mm.
Then we said there's a concept of fairness.
Mhm.
Then we said, okay, maybe it's because what if we switch it up? What if we do a boy and a girl?
Yeah.
50-50.
Mm.
What if we do different races? 50-50. What if we do 5? So it's an odd number, 3 and 2. And sometimes it would be the giver. And the idea is that the giver is going to be the most selfish in that situation.
Yes.
Because it benefits them the most, and
Yeah.
the receiver should just take whatever they are given.
Yeah.
But because there is this like presumption of equality and fairness, that we try to at least go 50-50 every single time.
Mm.
Now, why? I mean, what's occurred since the 70s? Obviously,
Well,
is a
that's what I
lot.
was gonna say. That's boomer, and we're seeing boomer, and so the 70s would make sense because those were boomers, right? And we're seeing this the boomer generation is still looking out for themselves.
Yeah.
No, for real.
Yeah.
They're selfish AF, man.
Mhm.
Hoarding wealth. Like the boomers have even like historically only thought of themselves. So that makes sense that this generation is balking that system that that the boomers are different than the boomers.
I just thought that was like an interesting
Yeah.
comparison.
Oh, I want to replicate that. I'll have to look into that. See how it applies to some of my maybe even my equity class. How that will look. Well, the final thought that I want to share with you is clearly education is not a one size fits all proposition. Different philosophies work in different environments for different students, for different teachers, in different situations. And so as you continue your journey to becoming an educator, I want you to consider how these philosophies will shape you as a teacher and your students' learning experiences. Because sometimes you might go to a school that tells you teach the classics. And so you're gonna have to think, okay, oh, is this for me? Am I really a perennialist? I don't know if I could do that. Um, and I also don't want to identify that there's no right or wrong one. A lot of times we're drawing from all of them, that it is a mix of them. So it is not like, oh, you said you are a centralist, you're wrong. No, it's just as at some point we've seen through the examples of folks in this classroom, some certain subject areas, certain teachers might just ascribe to that philosophy. All right. Next, what I want you to do is go to D2L. Yes.
Why?
To determine what philosophy you most align to. So it's not a quiz to yeah, it's not a quiz for you to regurgitate everything I just said. It is just to kind of see where you fall. But I tricked you, and that was good. There's a win for that. So if you go into D2L, show you, and you're gonna have to make a chart. Kind of help you with this. Okay. So you're going to want to make a chart with 90 boxes. So let me show you how it might look for me.
Like on Excel?
Yeah.
Oh.
It could be Excel. I'm gonna put I'm such a Google Docs person. Um,
Said 9.
Yes. So for number one, oh, and actually you don't need two boxes, you just need two boxes. So for one, did you have a 1 or a 0? For two, did you have a 1 or a 0? Three, because you're going to add them up at the end, so you're going to want to make sure. So it might be better to do Excel because Excel will add them up for you in the end. And then 5, 1, or 0. So you just want to have that you can turn in and write an explanation of your.
Wait.
So hold on, just let me finish. Huh?
Explanation for all 80?
No.
How many questions are there?
They're 90.
Oh,
They're 90. So
You wanna do that and answer the analysis questions too?
so all you're doing is reading a statement and identifying 1 or 0, whether you agree or disagree. And then after you kind of look at it, gives you it'll tell you then based on the number that you fall into what your philosophy is. And this is actually an extended philosophy. So this will have realism, it'll have other forms of philosophies in it. And so after you've done that, I just want you to answer these 5 questions. Which philosophies did the survey indicate that you aligned to the closest? So which of those philosophies did you have the largest numbers in? Do you agree or disagree with the survey? Why or why not? Why or why not? What 4 questions did you feel most represented your current beliefs? And what 4 questions did you have a negative reaction to? So if I were you while I was doing this, I might code this one green. So I'm like, oh, I really like that. That I had a positive reaction to this one. Or I might 6 was like, oh, you got me all messed up. I might color that one red, so it might be easier for me to answer that question. And then how does the survey help you to clarify your beliefs about education? So they're not hard questions. They really are reflective questions after you take the survey.
And how do you have to do? I have to have a chart, or I can just put my total at the bottom of.
But how are you going to total that? You're going to have to do it on paper or something.
That's the point. I don't know how to use Excel.
Well, you could just do what I did. Use a document. So my document, I just put 2 columns in. And I put the numbers in the first column, the numbers of the questions to 90 in one column, and then I just put a 1 or 0 in the next one.
This Word, Microsoft or Google?
Yeah, Microsoft or Google will do it. I can help you set it up. Who else has other questions about? Yes.
Do you want us to, so we're submitting our responses on like what we got right, but do we need to submit the table? With
Yeah,
the
please.
row?
And even in Excel, just write the answers at the bottom of that Excel sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I tally it up on paper, I just take a picture of that and submit it.
Yep.
you can actually copy and paste your questions to Google Docs.
Oh,
and then
cool.
Just like kind of like put your answer, like just highlight it.
Awesome. Destiny, did you see that? What Fatima said, that might be a good solution for you.
Just copy and paste the questions into.
I already
Google
did that.
Oh.
I already did that. I'm talking about the chart. Like I want to know how to do the chart.
Well, if you do that, you don't need to do the chart.
So I don't need to do that. I don't need to do the chart.
If you cut and paste the questions there and you just identify 1 or 0 next to the questions, you don't have to do the chart.
Ask them 5 questions.
No, it's the questions on the test.
Right.
So the questions on the test, if you copy and paste them like that. And
All of them, and just put the numbers and add it to them.
But Destiny, I think your other question, you still have to do those 5 questions at the end.
Right. No,
Okay.
I know that.
Okay.
I thought that's what she was saying. Just copy the questions and put them on the. I didn't know she's saying copy the questions off the test and put it on the document. That's easy thing. So 1 is good, 0 is not?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't understand the scoring system. Is it the specific amount of points that we get that determines whether or not which particular?
So if you look at the bottom, it'll tell you if you scored, if the bottom is the scoring sheet. It identifies all the ones that are related to like question number 3.
Oh, those are the questions.
Yes. So that's why might want to put the number in front of. You want to make sure the number is in front of. If you cut and paste, you want to make sure the number is in front of the question too. That's going to help with scoring. I can tell you that the only thing that we did last week, because you were out last week, so the week prior, you can go to the announcements and see, conducted the whole slideshow on there. Last week, we didn't do a slideshow. All we did was present our research for the educational movement. I think that's the tricky part. Did you get it? Or which side is fine?
They had locked me out and I had to make a phone and things, so I just. I'm sure.
I believe so.